devices keep me alive in perpetual motion. These ingenious devices turn.
Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to bang on for a while about some steampunk items that I've made. I've been posting a few sculpture videos recently, which is a major area of interest for me, but one of my primary other focuses is making pieces, sculptures and items in the steampunk genre. Now I do intend to do some full sort of how-to videos about how I made a lot of these items, but for the time being I just wanted to do sort of an overview of all the pieces I've created, as I've created quite a few over the last few years. My brother really got me into this. He's a steampunk musician and we wanted to do some music videos, so I set about creating some steampunk props to use in the videos, and that really got me into actually creating pieces for myself. A few of my pieces ended up being shown in a small art exhibition down in Kew Steam Museum, and that really sort of catapulted me into this whole crazy world of Victorian technology. Now I've got involved in quite a number of steampunk events, and the main one is the Asylum, which is a large steampunk festival in Lincoln. Here's some pictures from that festival. The town is just ideally suited for it really. You can see Lincoln Cathedral here, which is just such a lovely building. There's a sort of an old town market square in front of the cathedral, and on the other side of that is a large castle. So it's really the perfect setting for sort of a retro science fiction festival. And here's a picture of my gang as well. You can see there's a big Union Jack influence going on there. That's John in the Union Jack coat, which he made himself, and of course everybody made their own pieces in the photos here. And here's Angela and Sue in their Imperial Etheric Airways air stewardess costumes. They made these themselves, of course, as well. Everybody has their own specialty, whether it be making clothes and costumes or prop making, art, music. It's just nice to be able to discuss ideas and techniques. I've really learnt tons simply by talking to people about their own projects. Now I wanted to talk about some of the pieces that I've made for the Asylum and for various other steampunk events that I've attended. The first one that you can see here is a Gauntlet, which was really supposed to be a Iron Man gauntlet, so sort of like a Victorian steampunk version of what an Iron Man sort of repulsor glove might be. This was made from various pieces that I got from pound shops and from eBay. The base is obviously leather, which I also got off eBay, but it's really made relatively inexpensively. The metal tubes that you can see there are actually intended for cleaning out drains. You sort of put them down the sinkhole and drag out all the gunk. I got those from a pound shop, I think like 3 for £1, so relatively cheap. The gauge I got there from eBay. The detail in the palm you can see here is a light fitting which has got a quartz crystal in it, and all I really did was sit down in the front room with all of these various bits and pieces in front of me and try to cobble them together as best you can. I suppose the common thing in steampunk is like upcycling, so sort of creating items out of junk or just throwaway items. It was really fun putting this together. As you can see here, it actually formed part of a larger piece. So I had a upper arm and shoulder pad and also a chest piece here, and as you can see when I turn it on here, there's a light underneath the quartz crystal. All the detailing here was made from parts from an old VHS player. I pulled it apart and took all the insides out, added some cogs as you do in steampunk, and really just sort of tried to come up with something that was maybe a little bit like Tony Stark's, what's it called, an arc reactor. So sort of like a steampunk version of that. Now it's all very well making a costume piece and wearing it for 5 minutes in the front room, but it becomes a very different thing when you've actually worn it for several hours or even several days at a convention or a festival. You start to realise that what's comfortable for 5 minutes in the front room isn't quite as comfortable once you've been wearing it for a few hours. So I set about making a revised version. First off, the gauntlet sits on my right hand, and I'm right-handed, and as you may have noticed I do like a bit of photography, so operating a camera with a gauntlet on was a bit of a challenge. So I decided to make another version, one that would sit on my left hand, and one that would also have a removable hand so that I could take it off if I needed to take photography or get my wallet out of my pocket or any of the things that you take for granted that you subsequently find that you can't do when you've got a whacking great leather gauntlet on. And as you can see here, I also decided to expand it up onto my back as a sort of I don't know, a steampunk power arm or something like that, and that was also created for the Asylum. For this piece I wanted to do something a little bit more elegant than the previous version. The previous version was quite sort of clunking and powerful and a little bit like a power fist, I suppose, like something you might get out of Warhammer 40,000. For this one I wanted to do something a little bit more streamlined. So what I did was to get some of those curved stencils that you can get from WH Smith's, and I simply used those to cut out some templates in the leather. I'd recently learned how to solder, so you can see there's some curved pipework on there. That's just carb brake pipe, which you can get very cheaply off eBay, which I've bent to shape. It's very easy to bend and solder into place. I then stitched the leather together, dyed it, and this was the finished result. Similarly for the hand, this is mostly soldered brass with some obviously leather harnesses in there to hold it all together. For the backpack, I wanted to do something that was a little bit different. A lot of the stuff I'd been making up to this point was leather. I mean, obviously a lot of steampunk stuff is leather, but for this I wanted to do something in a different colour, because everything sort of seems to end up being brown and brass. The intention for this was it should look slightly like a beam engine that had been shrunk down that you could wear on your back, so I wanted to copy the colours I'd seen on a beam engine in Kew Steam Museum. This is actually made out of MDF wood, which is just all hot glued together. Then I've given it a skin of styrene plastic and obviously painted that up and added various mechanical detailing. The brass canister on the side is also a brass garden sprayer, so you would fill it with your pesticide, pump it up and use that to spray your garden. So it's sort of a combination of built items and found objects that I've put together there. So this piece started off as just some chainmail that I started making in my lunch break at work. I'd made some chainmail previously for a stop motion animation that I made years ago, but I wanted to have a go at doing a slightly larger scale set, and this really just grew and grew over several months. I wasn't sure exactly what the final piece would look like, but I knew it would incorporate the chainmail, so once I had that to a decent size, I started coming up with a design for the surrounding armour. Now I wanted this to be somewhere between clothing and armour, so it's got sort of aspects of both. It's composed of veg tan leather, and as you can see I've also included some soldered details like sort of, I guess that's a power junction perhaps, and there's a pressure gauge there as well. The shoulder pad's recycled from my previous piece, which was the chest piece, sort of Iron Man device. The way I made this was to sculpt the detail over a cardboard shape. I then made a silicone mould and cast up some fiberglass copies, which were then painted. I spent a lot of time making this, and I do quite like the final result, but it's not my favourite piece to be honest, so now it really just sits in the front room, giving it a bit of character. And finally my mask, which is something I made a while back for another music video for my brother's song Spinning the Compass. We needed a villain for the video, and you know, as with all my stuff, it's sort of made on a budget, so we didn't have much time or money to do it, and so I just sort of rummaged through my cupboard to see what I had. Now the mask I'd made for a short horror film a few years previously, so I still had the mould sitting in the cupboard, so I cast up a copy and really just started adding some steampunk gadgets to the side. I guess I had vaguely in my mind that it could be a little bit like a steampunk predator, and to that end I ended up adding the conduit sort of dreadlock type things there as well. Now after we'd finished the video I realised that the mask had started becoming quite popular. Pictures of it kept cropping up on Flickr and Pinterest and places like that. I'd also created a short YouTube video just showing off the mask, and that got something like 30,000 views, which is a ridiculous amount of views for my videos. I mean, I usually only get a couple of hundred. So it was clearly becoming quite popular, and someone even contacted me and asked me to make them a copy because they liked it so much. So I realised it had become a piece that I was sort of getting a little bit recognised for. Now the original version I'd actually left in Kew Steam Museum, and I never actually retrieved the original piece. And obviously I'd made a copy for someone else, but I didn't actually have a piece for myself, so I decided to make one just so I could display it at events and for any other reasons. After a few years I realised that I hadn't actually worn it to the Asylum, and I needed a new outfit for the upcoming festival, so I decided to take the idea further and actually make a fully fledged steampunk predator. So to that end I took the backpack from my previous power arm piece and added to that a shoulder mounted gun which could move and flex. Which is what you can see here. Now this is mainly made from wood, which is covered in styrene and painted, and it's driven by brake cables. Now this version I wore last year at the Asylum and it worked fairly well, but I think I'm going to be revising it slightly. I got talking to a friend of mine who actually works in the special effects industry, so he was able to give me some tips as to how they do cable control there, and he gave me some ideas as to how I can improve the control system. So that's it for me. As I mentioned, I will be looking at some of these items in a bit more detail in future videos. I've also just realised that it's barely 5 months until the next Asylum, which may seem like a while, but it's not really that much time. So I do need to get working on my outfit for the new festival, and I'll be doing a build vlog on here about that.
Ingenious devices keep me alive in perpetual motion. These
Thanks very much for watching. I'll be posting more videos on future projects, so please do subscribe if you'd like to keep up with what's going on. You can also find out more on my website, which is www.thedarkpower.com, or you can follow me on my Facebook page. Just search for The Dark Power.
Ingenious devices filled with the steam from 1,000 pistons. These